Welcome back and thank you for staying with Morning Express. 40 minutes past 6 a.m. Good morning if you're just joining us. We want to delve deeper into the latest political matters. This is Political Point. Already joined in studio by James Gakuya, who's the Embakasi North Member of Parliament, as well as Alex Manyasi, who's a governance and policy expert, joining us via way of Zoom. Gentlemen, many thanks for your time. Before the break, Gakuya, I had interacted with you about the sending of the 6 senators packing. It was quite interesting coming to mind the fact that they had, according to the Disciplinary Committee, had violated Article 13 of the party's constitution. And I just hinted what Raphael Tuju just yesterday had mentioned, that this was a long time coming. It wasn't suspect. They were quite patient with it. And it's not like it's all smiles as they do this. So it's interesting to take your point, Alex Manyasi. What do you make of the 6 nominated Jubilee senators who were sent packing? Is the timing suspect? What do you make of this?
Yeah, for me, the way I look at it is it was just a matter of time. From the purge that we have seen happen in the Senate, it was just a matter of time before this happens. That's number one. And then number two, it's easier to target nominated members of parliament because that's easy. Once you send them home, they do not have a constituency as such, so to speak. And so the easiest way of balancing numbers is to send those ones home so that with the hope that you can replace them. And that's probably a discussion for another time. So those are the two reasons I see. And of course, what we have been seeing within Jubilee itself, between the president and the deputy and the two camps, then you will imagine that someone will be thinking about the numbers if you want to push legislation, if you want allegiance, if you want to stamp your authority, and then which are the areas that you need to target. So all those things are a culmination of the power struggles within Jubilee.
Okay, Manyasi, still with you. I mean, the reason this is actually coming at the 6 senators, nominated senators, is one, some of them failed to appear for a disciplinary team last year, or rather they failed to appear for Uhuru's meeting. Mwaura, we well know for his affiliations, or rather promoting the UDA party, which insiders mentioned that this is an affiliate of the Jubilee party. So talk to me about this. The deputy party leader is Deputy President William Ruto, is definitely charting a way forward for himself. But these nominated senators are following the deputy party leader. What do you make of these intricacies?
That's an interesting question you raised in terms of affiliation of UDA. First of all, because the people who are championing or who formed UDA are associated with the Jubilee does not automatically mean that legally they're affiliated to Jubilee. That's one. Secondly, the position in which the deputy president is very different from the position in which the elected members of parliament are, and who are also different from the position where the nominated members of parliament are. And the difference is, for example, removing a deputy president under the current constitution in the way they were in the same ballot, they were elected together. Legally, it's very difficult to remove him from office. Removing a member of parliament from office is equally complex because this is someone who has a constituency. You need a by-election, you need IEBC, you need all those people. It's complex, it requires money. Removing a nominated member of parliament is much easier. The complexity will be, I know they will run to the tribunal, they will also run to court. We've seen Aisha Juma kicked out, but she's still in parliament because of the processes that need to be followed after that. What foresee, and I don't know how they have structured it, probably they have expelled them. Maybe they will run very quickly and also replace them. That's something that we'll wait and see. However, the positions in which all these offices sit is different in terms of the way you want to look at it. From if you were to remove them from office, the complexities are different, and therefore this is more of looking at which are the areas that are easier to deal with, and therefore the nominated members of parliament will be the easiest to remove.
It will be interesting to see, even as some of them are set to appeal. Well, the Jubilee Party might also move quite swiftly to replace them. Gakuya, even as we appreciate this fact, it seems President Uhuru Kenyatta is cracking the whip. But the members of parliament, and I'll enjoin the current meeting right here where 139 MPs actually met with the DP and made their political and legislative statements clear. One thing that touches on Jubilee Party is the withdrawal or the rechanneling of the monthly contributions to the Jubilee Party. They're rechanneling it to UDA. Perhaps you have more information on this. What would necessitate such a move?
Let me say, at the point we are now, is totally that it is very clear to everybody that at least Jubilee is in a very deep langos. These langos have, at this point, reached at a point where the DP, the party has split into two. You have seen about a number, almost 140, in their PG yesterday. This tells you that's how divided is the party. And you cannot ignore such a magnitude number of parliamentary and senators backing as a one side part of the Jubilee Party, when the rest have been that on the other side. In this particular point, I would say, issue to do with the contribution of party contribution. I would say it's mandatory, but it's not mandatory in what particular amount you should remit to the party. You can write a letter to the Speaker, advise the Speaker just to remit 1,000 shillings to the party, and the rest you can do it in whichever way you may decide. And that particular case, it is that member who feels if he decides to proceed on that particular line. In this particular case, I would like to say, there are those who feel that they are no longer heading into 2022 politics using the umbrella of the current Jubilee. And these are the people now who feel they are not supposed to keep on funding a party which is not doing anything to their wish. Mm-hmm. And therefore, they are focusing now on the future. And if they are focusing on future, they may decide, yes, our limitation, our contribution may go somewhere else where that contribution is being respected. And I think this is a feeling of those members that they can keep contributing something small to the Jubilee, just to either with what we call the Political Parties Act, but they can, nobody can stop them from contributing to another different angle. And in this particular case, I would say the head of state is a party leader, and I have not known why he has taken too long to bring together these two serious separating groups. Because if he was willing to unite Jubilee, he had power and authority, and he had means of uniting them. Right. But it's like he was somewhere deliberately wanted the spirit of the party to the point it is. And nobody can be blamed. You can only blame the head. Because if it is rotting, it starts rotting from the head downward. So in this one, I would say, if at this point we are seeing members feeling very discomfort, mm-hmm. It tells you that there is a fire burning inside the Jubilee, and unless something is done there, it's like some of the members have decided to take a different angle on a different roadmap.
Well, it's interesting. Is it possible to leave the party officially right now?
It is not possible to leave the party officially right now according to the law, because the law is very clear that one must belong to one party at one time, and therefore they cannot close at this point. But here it's only the body which is being seen in the Jubilee Party, but their hearts are elsewhere.
It's interesting, even as the leaders just yesterday after that current meeting agreed to mobilize their supporters and officials within the Jubilee party to resign en masse and register with the UDA party ahead of the elections in April. I just want to get a quick bite of what was actually mentioned, or some of the sentiments that were raised during that particular meeting that was held in Karen, in the official residence of the Deputy President. Let's listen in.
The evil scheme, which began with a targeted withdrawal of security of members of parliament, has now been extended to total withdrawal of official security coverage by police officers at meetings attended by the Deputy President. I urge the international community, and here I will specifically reach out to our friends, the United States of America, the European Union countries, the United Kingdom, and also including the African Union and African nations and the United Nations, to turn its focus on Kenya and help this country avoid a precipitous descent into political meltdown as next year's elections draws near.
Well, that's the security angle that was highlighted. There seems to be, according to them, allegedly a hidden agenda to disrupt peace in the hustler-based campaigns. Gakuya, allow me to ask you, quite briefly, were you there during the meeting yesterday?
I was not there during the meeting, but my heart was there.
But your heart was there?
Yes.
Another question, has your security been withdrawn?
My security are intact with me.
Okay.
I have not seen, there is no single signal which has emanated showing in the direction of removal. Though, legally, I enjoy security, but I walk alone. I am a hustler and I know how hustler works.
Okay.
Yes, I've been in this city for more than 20 years in politics, and I have been alone, and I was not in the security, and I believe there is a life after house.
All right.
And therefore, I believe it's better for me to train being working alone, because even after the exit, I will still not require those bodyguards.
Okay. Manyasi, we're on the outside looking in. Perhaps we don't enjoy such privileges, but it's quite crucial. Let's talk about the security aspect that was raised by these members of parliament. They seem not quite secure, according to them, even though the Deputy President at the end of the meeting sort of did mention through his proxies that he is fine and safe. But what does this speak to about the police? I mean, they just changed uniform the other day. We'd expect that being used to settle political scores is a thing of the past, but it seems not quite so, according to these members of parliament.
Yeah, so some of those sentiments, in my view, were a bit disappointing, to say the least. Why I say that is because the escalation of the Jubilee Party wrangles to calling out the international community and talking about the AU and the US and the UK and talking about bringing focus to Kenya because the country is about to slide into chaos. I do not think, first of all, I was a bit shocked by that statement, because that in itself is almost beating the drumbeats of war. So it's unfair for a country to be drawn into international limelight because of wrangles in a party. I know that I'm not belittling the wrangles within the Jubilee Party, but at the same time, I do not think that we have gotten to a point where we are saying that the wrangles within the party will definitely escalate into war. And therefore, one of the things that we should expect is that probably Susan Kihika should be explaining to Kenyans, or at least to the security agencies, what information she has with regards to this country sliding into war. So that is one. Secondly, back to the question you asked about security. First of all, the issue as we speak about Kenya and the security forces, one of the things that we have discussed for so long is the fact that VIPs have taken so much security such that sometimes this country looks as if it doesn't have enough security men and women. So that is one thing that, first of all, we need to be addressing as a country in terms of the way we protect our VIPs, the way we protect government buildings, and the way we protect especially elected leaders. So in as much as they need security, that also points to the point where some of us have been having arguments around, do we have Kenya that is secure, such that even me, who is not an elected member of parliament, can feel like I am secure enough to be in this country? So if we have focused so much, and other countries have done this, having armed policemen moving around with elected leaders and other officials in itself is not sustainable. So even besides the fact that the MPs are saying, even though Mheshimiwa in studio has said that his security is intact and he's among the group, so probably even we should be questioning that question, that statement, whether it's accurate that she says the security of their security has been withdrawn in total. So then we should be having an official statement probably from the Deputy President around, is his security intact? If that is the case, then it should be about, because you see the DP is in the presidency. So the presidency is protected as one, and therefore you will expect that if the president is protected, definitely the deputy is. But for members of parliament and other leaders, our security so far, we need to rethink in terms of wholesomely whether we use and utilize our security agencies doing the right thing. And I have said this before. We have seen, for example, even M-Pesa shops, we have seen banks being guarded by police. Is that the most efficient way of utilizing our security? Those are discussions that we need to have on a wider scale.
Well, we'll definitely build up on that, but let's take a different angle. Apart from the security aspect that was highlighted, Kuya, it was interesting to note that the ethnic and regional-based balkanization was condemned during that meeting. They encouraged issue-based politics. You come from a metropolitan area, you represent Embakasi North, so perhaps it might not be based on the tribal affiliations, but in different areas of the country, that seems to be the political game. We have talk of kingpins here and there in different regions. What say you about this? What exactly is the agenda when you bring up issue-based politics?
What I would say is that this country, for a long time, has been walking along what we call tribal lines, political tribal lines. And you find that if you want to gun for a presidential, you have to rally behind those kingpins. You must to check which areas have thematic strongholds of population. And then you have to look who is the kingmaker there. Then once you identify the kingmaker there, then you try to find what we call a correlation between those tribal lines. And then you find that wherever we proceed, where we have coming from, and especially from the 1992 multi-party. Multi-party, if we walk behind, it was brought up by a team, but they failed to unite at the end. You remember Jaramogi, the late Matiba, and Kibaki went separately to their presidential contention. And that one made them to be thrown down by Moi regime then. But if they could have united at that particular point, it tells you that their numbers were capable of trouncing Moi at that particular time. But find a situation where Matiba was a contender and Kibaki was a contender. Then we had, in the Central Province, we had two spokesmen. And finally, you realize that Kibaki also got about 1 million votes. Matiba got about 1.5. Yeah. But today, after that, when they realize that it is the effort of Raila Odinga, who, and in those early 2002, when he declared Kibaki Tosha, and that is when the opposition gained a very serious momentum towards a winning an election. And that's how the opposition won for the first time.
All right.
And I think that coalition of those parties, that coalition, it brought a big right to Kenya. And today, at this point, that coalition still works. And I don't see the threshold that we have that we have created in our constitution, that there is any single community in this country which will be able to garner for president alone. It is a clear indicator that every community must unite with another, either or one must be capable of persuading the whole nation to back him. And in this particular point, I am finding a situation where the deputy president is on a roadmap where he's trying to introduce himself as a Hasra team who can bring all Hasras together without that element of tribalism.
Okay.
And if we can make it, it's better. Okay. But it's a politics which is very, very tactical and very, very tricky.
Well, it's a high-stakes political game. Alex Manyasi, do you think Kenya is ready? Because the nature of our politics speaks for itself. Do you think Kenya is ready for issue-based politics at the end of the day?
You know, the challenge with issue-based politics sometimes is very complex in itself. If you think about even the discussions that have been going on at the national level, we have not seen much of issues being discussed. And so even when we talk about the hustlers and the other dynasties and the haves and the have-nots, we have not yet seen tangible issues to a point where we can say that this side stands for these ideologies and the other side stands for the other ideologies. I think it's only yesterday that I heard the deputy president start explaining how he will take care of the hustler nation. Yeah. That was the first attempt in a long time to hear what his intentions are in terms of bringing the masses into the economic fold. But having said that, the issue of tribes is alive. Mheshimiwa sitting in studio, he will tell you, for example, I don't know if he can deny that, but in Nairobi, for example, you will see 99, probably 90% of the MPs are elected in places where majority of the voters are aligned to their own tribes. That's a fact. And so, in terms of numbers, and that's why some people have even been ferrying in people from other places to come and fill up the numbers if they're not comfortable yet. Mike Sonko, who was widely a hustler in Nairobi in that context, and who brought together admiration from across all the other tribes, at one point he retreated to his Kamba community because he realized he needed the Kambas to vote as a bloc. Yeah. So all these things are a reality of what it means when we talk about tribe in Kenya. At the national, at the presidential level, we might be lucky if that imagination about tribes can be taken away at some point. I'm one of those people who does not believe that we should be voting someone based on their tribe. But at the same time, these are realities that we must deal with. You cannot, for example, if that was not true, then we should see a Luo going to vie in Nyanza being voted in. Yeah. We have only seen such cases in urban centers, and they are not more than 3. And even in those kind of areas, we have seen the political kingpins like that Mheshimiwa was talking about directly involved. We have seen Shabir, for example, in Kisumu. We have seen Junet Mohammed. We have seen, I think, 1 or 2 other cases like MCAs, one in Kiambu. So those are rare cases, but even with that, they are largely in urban areas, and there must be a constituency that has been rallied around to make sure those people actually go through. So we are very far from getting to a point where tribes are eliminated from our thinking. And that will only happen, in my view, if we think as one nation other than thinking as tribes.
Okay, that's quite interesting. It will be a journey, but you definitely can't stop an idea whose time has come, if it truly has come. Something else that struck out is the issue about the Building Bridges Initiative, the Constitutional Amendment Bill 2020. The leaders were quite clear that it is not a priority at this particular point. In fact, they mentioned they'll prioritize pro-poor legislation and policies which will support their agenda, sort of the bottom-up approach. Let's listen in to Aden Duale, who actually is a Garissa Township Member of Parliament, as he spoke yesterday on this.
The issue of BBI, we said it's not a priority, it's not a priority for the country. If worst come to the worst, give the people of Kenya their democratic right to choose from the menu.
So, priority question has definitely come up over and over again, Rakuya. We've talked about it as well. But the multiple choice issue, what do you make of this? I'm aware that the Speaker gave a communique that both the referendum bills, that's from the JLAC Committee and the COIC, are supposed to work together in terms of pushing a way forward. What do you make of this?
Personally, I have no problem with the whole document, but actually there are areas that I'm not comfortable with. And for Kenyans who thinks that actually there is a beneficial within the BBI, I think the idea of coming up with multiple choices is very necessary, so that this document is not going to be sown the dust in totality, but it can safeguard those areas that Kenyans feel that is of their choice.
But critics argue it will be cumbersome.
If it is cumbersome, then it have no choice. It is democratic choice. You just give it a room for the majority to pass it. If the majority fails to pass it, then it means that the document has totally failed. And this is an exercise where this country is a democratic country. And I would urge the systems that let us not push and force these particular documents as a dossier to Kenyans. Allow Kenyans to read it, let them consider it, and also give their view in terms of voting. That's the only way that a Kenyan can believe that she has his right and he has decided his right. The system today, what it could be doing, as these matters are progressive, is maybe to educate, civic education. Give Wanjiku, because not every Kenyan is literate. Most of Kenyans, maybe they are illiterate and they cannot understand what the document talks about. Yeah. And therefore, the urge for civic education is very necessary, so that Wanjiku, wherever he is, he can be able to understand what is the contents of this particular document, and he will be able to make up his mind and decide collectively at the time of the vote. That is the route that the authors of this BBI should be taking for now, okay, so that at least every single Kenyan will be able to be part of the decision making at the end of the day.
Okay, Manyasi, what do you make of those statements that BBI at this time is not a priority for Kenyans, and if the country should definitely go to a vote, it should be a multiple choice referendum? What's your take?
Yeah, I agree completely with the fact that it may not be the right time for this country to be holding referendums. That's true because of the cost element. However, even as I say that, the basic question I've always asked myself is, where did we take the money? So if we can answer that question, for me, if we had not taken our money into places that we should not have taken it, then the issue of saying it's the wrong timing or we have no resources should not have arisen. That's one. Number two, and I have no apologies to make, I do not listen to Duale, and this is the reason. Duale was leader of majority for almost 7 years. Duale misled the president of this country for a very long time. There are many pieces of legislation that have been thrown out because they were illegal and the way they were passed. So first of all, Duale, in my view, as a person, is the wrong person to be lecturing me about what needs to be done right. Having said that, back to the issue of the questions around whether it should be multiple question or not. Personally, I will look at it this way. If you ask the proponents at the leadership level of this document and ask them to pick which questions they want to say yes to, of course, they'll go to the structures of government which favors them, and they will say yes to. If you ask Mwananchi, who is against this document, then definitely what they will do is they will vote for areas that will be increasing contribution to the county level to 35%, and vote against the areas that talk about creating positions of prime minister and deputies and others. So it just depends on whom you're speaking to. And therefore, by bringing it together, then it means all of us make a contribution to whether we want to say yes to someone else and say yes to myself. So it's more about thinking about, then should I be helping someone else by passing their question, as I pass mine.
Okay.
But if you divide it up, then definitely most Kenyans will vote for other sections and vote against the questions that bring in issues about power sharing and all that. And remember, some of these things are tied together. If you reduce, for example, the conflict at the national level or at the executive level, then the imagination is that you reduce conflict at the lower level by making sure that the leaders actually have a way of working together. But if we want to reject that in total, then Kenyans will make a decision to reject even those areas that are seen to be favoring them. So it's one document. I do not see the leadership, for example, accepting to bring multiple questions at the referendum level because of the same reason that I have given. That will automatically mean, even without having to go to the referendum, we will not have to spend so much money when we know the outcome of the referendum.
All right, that's an interesting angle. But Mheshimiwa, even as Parliament resumes today, help us understand the bottom-up approach that the legislators were necessitating. They mentioned a couple of legislative bills, the Tea Act, the Coffee Act, Crops Amendment Bill, Milk Regulation Bill. How exactly is this instrumental in the hustler direction that it is taking, the bottom-up approach?
My take in this is that, as it has been explained by my panelists there before, it is very clear that our economy will require bottom-up, because once you recognize that middle person down there actually generates something little and put something in the basket, out of all what is harnessed from that bottom level, it's what makes the basket full at the end of the day. Because it is the 1 shilling that you collect from Wanjiko Hoka, another shilling one you collect from a trader, another shilling you collect from either the Juakari sector, and at the end of the day, you get something at the basket. So I am saying it is very necessary to make sure that we empower those people who are coming up from those down areas, especially Juakari sectors, traders in markets, and these other Juakaris like hawking and everything else. At the end of the day, you can generate, because once a farmer is being taken care of, and when his product is being taken care of, the value addition is being done, and then therefore he increases his products. At the end of the day, the government will also reap much out of that farmer, and that farmer will end up with something in his basket. So therefore, once we empower these people, we empower the nation, because actually we have empowered our community down there, and then the whole concept makes the country to generate more and more and more resources.
Okay, well, basic economics quite there. True. Manyasi, what do you make of this strategy, the bottom-up approach? Many might argue, I mean, these are MPs, some of them have been serving in Parliament for quite a while. They should have known this a while back in terms of the legislative agenda and their approach towards it. What say you?
Yeah, so actually this is what I mentioned when I said the Deputy President for the first time attempted to explain how he will manage the country, and he explained about the bottom-up approach, which in my view, if you think about what the bottom-up approach will be, and he talked about 100 million every constituency for people to do business and stuff like that. So that in itself is attempting to put money in the pockets of people. So there are several dynamics to that. Number one is that as a country, we will need to think about, and this is probably free advice I'm giving, for that to work, you need to put in place a strategy where you, for example, know every Juakali artisan and what they do and where they are and how they earn their money, and make sure that then that can be followed up with making sure that they are paying something in terms of tax. So that you need to make sure. Because that is the only way, for example, you can raise enough money going forward, because he was talking about, for instance, giving them loans which you pay without interest. And so where does the government get additional money to give people without interest? That means that you need to expand the tax bracket, which some of us have been talking about for a long time. What the government has been doing is to focus on Manyasi and others who have, whom you know, their money streams are designed in a certain way that you will collect it whether they want or not. There are 80% or 75% of Kenyans who are in the category of the hustler nation, either Juakali artisans or small farmers or small dairy farmers. You know, those are the people that we're talking about. Then how do you make sure that they contribute to the tax bracket? So if that can happen, then what we will do is that ensure that the tax bracket is widened, and by extension, you make more money as a country. The challenge is just one, like I said. So there's something in finance called materiality. So if you're going to use 1 million shillings to collect 500,000 shillings, then it will not make economic sense to even go after the 500,000 shillings.
Yeah.
So the bigger problem will be, how do you make sure that everybody is accounted for? One of the things that can be done is, for example, using things like Huduma number. One of the things that can be done is ensuring that every market has everybody registered and everybody is known what they do. And therefore, you do not have to physically monitor them. One of the things that was introduced, for example, that was an attempt, was introducing a tax through licensing. Now, why that failed, or why that largely failed, is because even most of the counties are still collecting 30 shillings and 50 shillings from people without giving them licenses. So that in itself fizzles out and does not even get to the exchequer. So it's a fairly complex issue that needs to be, for it to succeed, the Deputy President will need to sit with experts to help figure out how to do that. Otherwise, you might end up with sending money at the lower level, and then at the upper level, you have no money to send if you're not getting enough money or contribution from the small people that we are selling, that we're calling Mama Boga.
Okay.
So it's doable. It's the best thing to do. However, we have to know what everybody is doing and where.
Well, that's interesting. Thanks for the free advice, Manyasi. We'll definitely monitor this whole rhetoric about the bottom-up approach, even as Parliament resumes today a full entry of legislative agenda. But apart from that, something else that is set to happen today, gentlemen, I know we might be speculating, but it's proper to also mention. Gakuya, senators have been invited to the Senate Parliamentary Group meeting at KICC. It's set to start at around 10 a.m. I know you're a member of Parliament, but in extension, what do you make of this? What might be the agenda following what we've seen in Karen just yesterday?
You know, this is game of politics. And wherever you find such a PG being called, you must expect there will be a smoke, and then after smoke there has to be a fire. We are aware that actually Kangata, at some point, he wrote a letter to the president which leaked, and at least it's not a letter that made the president give president a lot of comfort, and the systems were not comfortable with it. And at this particular point, if you have seen such a kind of communication of a PG of Senate, it tells you, one, either the issue of replacement of Kangata is going to be on the floor, and therefore, probably that is the cause of today's senator's PG, because if it could be an issue of the whole PG, then there could be a call of the PG between the two houses. But since now it is a single house which is invited for a PG, it tells you there is a special agenda. And that special agenda, to me, I feel it's a replacement of Kangata's position.
It's interesting. Manyasi, I'd also beg to back what he's just mentioned. Going by the tweet Irungu Kangata put out, he mentioned, or he got biblical, and we know what happens when politicians refer to the Bible. He mentioned, "Courage, brother, do not stumble, though thy path may be dark as night." What do you make of this, especially since it's, well, it's part of the leadership, but the deputy majority whip is the one who sent the invite?
You know, I would want to say something that probably will be surprising in the sense that, in my view, Kangata was a mistake to start with.
Why is that?
Yes, and you know, sometimes to be entrusted with a position like that, first of all, the body language of the person, the demeanor of the person, the way they do things. Kangata does things the way he is doing them. He doesn't know any other way. So even for him to have acted by sending letters to the president publicly, and yet he has the phone number of the president, he has direct access to State House, because the positions that they hold give you direct access to State House. For him to have done that, and even if you look at, I have met Kangata in Parliament on other missions before, and these are guys who are popular with the electorate. But if it comes to serious positions like that, then you need strategists, number one. You need someone who will advise the president. Even when things are wrong, the public should never know that you are advising the president otherwise, and therefore make it look like the president is one who is not being advised properly or who is not listening to advice. That should never happen. So in terms of looking at the replacement of Kangata, probably that should have been done way before he wrote the letter. Some of us, when he was first of all picked, we were shocked in the sense that it almost appeared like the coup that happened in Fort Kenya, where the chair was meant to be someone and then he didn't show up, and therefore they decided to give it to Omunyinyi. You know, it almost appeared like that.
Okay.
And so if that was the case, then that mistake should have been corrected almost immediately, other than having to wait for this long and then make it an embarrassment.
Well, it's interesting, and it's also keen to note that the approach that was used by Irungu Kangata is what has been criticized. It's all speculation. We'll definitely get to see what the agenda of that particular parliamentary meeting for senators allied to the Jubilee party will hold as it starts at around 10 a.m. But gentlemen, as we conclude political point, it's interesting to also mention what Raila happened to say when he was in Nyanza meeting with various leaders in terms of the clamor for the region behind the BBI. He was quite clear that Uhuru will not betray me. It's also in the front page of the Standard, highlighted on page 7 as well. So it seems the handshake is intact despite the turbulence around it. Manyasi, I'll start with you. Even as you give us your final reply, what's your take on what we saw in Nyanza as Raila Odinga met those delegates?
First of all, we have been seeing an attempt by the former premier to consolidate different bases for purposes of backing BBI. So that we have been seeing, which looks like it's consistent. He has been in Central, he has been in the media, he's been talking to the people in Central Kenya. He's trying to consolidate his own base, which is critical. We have seen the president also meet the MCAs from the Central region. All this are geared towards making sure that the document that they are proposing or pushing for does not leave them with an egg in their faces. So that is the only thing that I'm seeing from what these discussions are about.
Okay.
And ultimately, obviously, what that also means politically is that if the document goes through, then you solidify your capacity to say that we have delivered part 1, and therefore what we do for part 2, which is 2022 general election. And so if you think about it that way, then you'll see that the deputy president is also looking at it from that sense. If I make sure that part 1, which is the BBI process, fails, then that gives me a better platform for 2022 in terms of saying that I have the capacity to convince Kenyans to say no to a government that I'm serving. So those are the political maneuvers that have to happen based on where you are. And that's probably why the former Premier was encouraging the DP to go ahead and be on the no camp. Why he was doing that, and the DP has been hesitant to doing that, because what that happens is that when you're in the no camp and then they defeat you, then that lowers your capacity to say that you have the confidence in a way that can convince Kenyans to say no to something.
All right,
and
Manyasi.
So for him, for the Premier, then it just solidifies his capacity to say that I delivered this and therefore I can deliver the other.
Well, politics is all about planning. Over to you, Gakuya. Even as you mentioned that briefly, we'd also like to give impetus to the fact that the High Court has actually sort of stopped the IEBC from holding a referendum until those 7 petitions are actually determined. What say you about that, Klaba?
Every Kenyan has a right to be heard. And those petitioners who presented their matter to judiciary, actually they are supposed to be heard because they belong to this country and the Constitution protects them. Therefore, I would say the judges pronounced themselves yesterday and they made a decision that they issue that particular order, that particular order for temporary closure of any proceeding of this particular BBI. But that is not permanent. It's just a temporary order. This order, this will give a room for the hearing of the petitioner, and I am sure very soon they will just give the verdict. At the end of the day, the decision of the court will give us a clear indicator whether we proceed with this particular karma of BBI or we close it altogether. So therefore, we have to wait until we see the smoke from that particular point.
All right.
And I am sure that that is only when we decide whether the document we are proceeding with the document or not.
Okay, gentlemen, many thanks for your time. Unfortunately, that's the time we had in terms of political point. James Gakuya, Embakasi North Member of Parliament, thanks for your contribution, and I'm sure it'll be a busy day as Parliament resumes at 3 p.m. Alex Manyasi, governance and policy expert, it's always a pleasure to have you with us, and thank you for your contributions right here. We now want to take a short break right here on Morning Express. It's almost 7:30. Time is truly flying. But you know what? Right after this short break, we'll be back with focus on Siaya County. Do stay with us.